One pleasant day at the train station, people were going about their business. Some were waiting for their train, while others simply needed to cross the tracks. When the light turned green, signaling it was safe to cross, a woman with her baby was the first to step forward. As they were crossing, the train suddenly experienced a brake failure and couldn't stop. The train lost control, causing passengers to jump out in panic, screaming for help. Onlookers noticed the train wasn't stopping, and chaos erupted as people ran away from the tracks, shouting warnings to those nearby. The woman, in a frenzy, desperately pulled her baby's stroller, begging for help. But the crowd, though wanting to assist, was too scared to approach, fearing the disaster that loomed. Then, from out of nowhere, a mysterious man vanished into the crowd. Moments later, he reappeared on the tracks, standing between the train and the terrified mother. With an unbelievable display of strength, the man halted the train with his bare hands, causing the train cars to crash into one another behind him. The mother, bracing herself for the worst, felt a powerful gust of wind and feared it was her and her baby's final moments. But when she dared to peek, she was shocked to see they were unharmed. The mysterious man had saved them. Speechless, she gazed at her savior as he helped her to her feet. Grateful, but also horrified, the mother and her child backed away when they saw the man's face, a skull. Fear gripped them as they believed death itself had come to claim them. In the mysterious man's world, he awakens to begin his day. His name is Zombie. Zom from zombie and Bai from zombie. He doesn't know his real name, how old he is, or when he died. Despite his frightening appearance, Zombie has a dream. He wishes to befriend humans and hopes that one day he won't be shunned or feared because of how he looks. Though this seems impossible, Zombie believes that if he continues to work hard and help humans, he can change their perceptions of him. To make his dream a reality, Zombie regularly performs heroic deeds. Once, when a plane was about to crash into a football stadium, Zombie shouldered the plane's weight to prevent disaster. Unfortunately, people were too focused on his appearance to notice his heroism. Another time, when a fire broke out in an apartment building, he rescued children trapped inside. But again, onlookers, including the firefighters and parents, reacted with fear rather than gratitude because of his ghastly face. Zombie wasn't always this strong. Before the apocalypse, when a zombie outbreak decimated the city, he was just an ordinary student. The outbreak hit unexpectedly, and Zombie was bitten, transforming into one of the mindless, flesh-hungry creatures that roamed the streets. At that time, humans showed no mercy. They exploited zombies as an energy source, burning them for fuel and using them in perpetual energy machines. To survive, Zombie knew he had to evolve. He started training rigorously, lifting weights, running, swimming, and honing his strength. His diet consisted solely of protein powder, and even though it was exhausting, he trained day and night. Over time, Zombie became nearly invincible, possessing both power and intellect. With these attributes, he reintegrated into human society, aiming to prove that zombies could coexist peacefully with humans. Despite his efforts, he still faces challenges. One morning, Zombie realizes he's out of food and heads to Eao's supermarket. The friendly cashier, unaware of Zombie's true identity, jokes about his constant mask wearing. As Zombie stocks up on groceries, including what seems like a lifetime supply of eggs, two men spy on him from the bushes, curious to see who's behind the mask. Even after Zombie finishes his shopping, they continue to follow him. Zombie, meanwhile, is distracted by a wanted poster in his hand. The man on the poster is someone he knows, Agu, a highly dangerous S-tier zombie with a bounty of 9,999,226 yen. The stalkers had been following Zombie ever since they saw him lift an entire airplane at the football field. The cameraman was skeptical, thinking they might have been fooled by the media. The guy with the mustache, though fixated on Zombie, agreed with the cameraman, speculating that the media might be exaggerating. Despite their doubts, the stalkers decided to continue following Zombie to satisfy their curiosity. Distracted by their conversation, they suddenly snapped back to attention, eyes wide in shock, as they saw Zombie lift the truck effortlessly. The ground cracked beneath him as he took off, flying into the sky with the truck like Superman. Stunned, the stalkers watched as Zombie soared into the blue sky, eventually flying so high he left Earth's atmosphere. Even astronauts aboard a nearby spaceship were baffled by his appearance. In a distant, restricted area lived a community of zombies. However, these weren't typical mindless, flesh-hungry creatures. They had thoughts, feelings, and could communicate. In this abandoned city, the zombies were starving. A young zombie complained to his mother about being hungry, but she told him to endure it a little longer. That night, Zombie suddenly appeared in the sky over the city, landing with the truck he had bought from the supermarket earlier. The zombie citizens gathered around, calling him their king. A young zombie nervously suggested that Zombie could have simply driven the truck there like humans do, but Zombie responded that he didn't have a driver's license. The child looked as if he had just learned something new about the outside world. This abandoned city was one that Zombie and his kind had taken over, hidden far from human eyes. Zombie declared that his people would replace human flesh with eggs as their source of protein. The zombies eagerly began feasting on the eggs Zombie had brought. Afterward, Zombie asked the child about Agu, the danger zombie from the wanted poster. The child pointed toward the main hotel in the city. Zombie made his way inside to meet with a group of powerful zombies, leaders in their town. These zombies were imposing, mythical-looking creatures. Lang, Fair, Aegon, Agu, the one from the poster, Varmin, and Blackie. Each of them was classified as an S-tier, boss-level zombie, with danger levels of SSS. Though Zombie appeared smaller than the others, he was treated with great respect, addressed as Your Majesty. Walking past them, he expressed his disappointment in Agu, who had committed violent crimes against humans. Agu apologized, admitting that he lost control whenever he encountered humans, likening it to a predator's instinct. Zombie, sitting casually on a couch like a king on his throne, had come not only to provide food for his people, but also to hear reports from his henchmen. Blackie stepped forward, reporting that while their numbers were steadily increasing, they had to keep relocating their base to avoid detection by humans. Varmin interrupted, voicing his frustration, suggesting they should just fight the humans. He complained that his chainsaw had started to rust from lack of use, implying he hadn't spilled blood in too long. Zombie, acting as a wise leader, cautioned Varmint against being naive, reminding him that humans could be terrifying adversaries. Their meeting was interrupted when they heard the sound of a plane approaching. It was an Air Force plane, with a woman on board who seemed to be a leader in a political organization. As she monitored the data on a board, her colleagues informed her that all systems were functioning perfectly and that their equipment was ready. She inquired about the payload, which turned out to be a massive nuclear warhead, set to detonate in 20 minutes. The woman, clearly harboring a deep-seated hatred for zombies, seemed both satisfied and furious as she anticipated bombing the abandoned city. Unbeknownst to the Air Force, the boss zombies had already sensed the approaching threat. Varmint, eager for action, suggested going out to fight the humans, but Zombie stopped him, knowing that Varmint would lose control if he encountered any humans. Instead, Zombie ordered the evacuation of the city, insisting that he would deal with the humans himself. Meanwhile, on the ground, additional military units were preparing to attack, aiming to kill any zombie they encountered. As the armies closed in, Zombie instructed his henchmen to evacuate the civilians within the next 20 minutes, seemingly aware of the chaos that was about to unfold. The organization had meticulously planned the operation, deploying not only air and ground units, but also a highly skilled combatant who was eager to eliminate every zombie in his path. Confident in his abilities, this individual was determined to cut down anyone who stood in his way. Unlike most zombies, the citizens of the abandoned city were genuinely terrified of the humans. Despite being undead mutants, they still wanted to survive and ran as fast as they could to escape. Back aboard the plane, a mad scientist-like figure observed the data, carefully monitoring the unfolding situation. The mad scientist, known as Faye, was informed by his colleague that the Extraordinaries Academy had located the zombies first. The Academy was responsible for the Air Force and ground unit mobilization. Upon hearing this, Faye smirked and quickly pressed a red button, revealing a horrific experiment in which humans were being used as bait for the zombies. Inside a cage, terrified humans screamed for help, protesting that they had never agreed to this. The cage was dropped and the zombies ambushed the helpless humans. As this was happening, the ground unit was informed that a team had detected human life, prompting orders for Tima to move to the marked location to rescue them. Soldiers set up machine guns along the road, prepared to shoot any escaping zombies. However, as they opened fire, they realized the zombies couldn't be killed. Among the chaos, a young zombie clung tightly to his sibling, trying to protect them from the assault. Their leader, Zombie, intervened, shielding the children by blocking the bullets. One soldier, skeptical that any zombie could be unkillable, believed they simply weren't using enough firepower. Without hesitation, he fired a rocket launcher at Zombie. The explosion rocked the area, but another soldier quickly pointed out that the target was the Extraordinary, that human society viewed as a hero, known for always wearing a zombie mask. Shocked and guilt-ridden, the soldier realized his mistake. He had fired at the wrong person out of anger. Despite the explosion, Zombie stood unharmed, ready to protect as many people as possible. Meanwhile, on the Air Force plane, a skilled fighter was preparing to skydive into the combat zone. He was informed that a boss-level zombie had been detected in Zone B. Without hesitation, he leaped from the plane, fearless and determined. Back in the command center, Faye and his colleague watched the data coming in from the battlefield. They noticed that the boss zombies had successfully saved most of the civilian zombies, and they began to realize they had underestimated these creatures, who clearly possess intelligence and strategy. Faye gave the signal for another inhumane act, dropping more humans in a cage to lure the zombies. The starving zombie civilians, who had gone without human flesh for so long, relapsed as soon as they sensed the humans. One particularly deprived zombie began to mutate into a massive, grotesque creature. The mutated zombie roared so loudly that it caught zombies' attention. This creature was the same boss-level zombie the army had detected in Zone B. As the skilled combatant dove into the area, the team that had mistakenly fired at zombie was briefed about the situation in Zone B and rushed to respond. The squad leader, feeling guilty for almost killing zombie, panicked and ran to help him, believing zombie to be gravely injured. The squad leader carried him to their vehicle, ordering his team to drive quickly while wrestling with the guilt of his mistake. Though confused, the team followed his orders. Among them, a red-haired girl grew curious about zombie, still believing he was wearing a mask. She wondered why he would wear it every day. Zombie nervously chuckled, knowing that it wasn't a mask at all. It was his actual face. In Zone B, a team of soldiers was locked in battle with the boss zombie, trying to figure out how to defeat the creature, which had become monstrously strong after mutating. The boss zombie, now a massive, raging beast, lifted a bus and hurled it toward the soldiers. Just then, a highly skilled swordsman from the Academy's martial club, named Marshall, arrived. With a swift motion, he sliced the bus in half midair. The soldiers cheered, confident that with Marshall on their side, they could win. Marshall positioned himself, ready for the boss zombie's next attack. He ordered the soldiers to focus on evacuating the human civilians, confident that he could handle the mutated zombie alone. Meanwhile, the squad leader and his team were busy helping the civilians escape. As they worked, they discussed the situation in Zone B. When the squad leader learned that Marshall had arrived and was already fighting the boss zombie, he was reassured, knowing that Marshall was not someone to be underestimated. Zombie, who had been brought along with the squad, couldn't remain idle. He recognized the boss zombie as someone he once knew, named Little Nine. As the red-haired girl continued helping the civilians, she noticed that zombie had slipped away and began to wonder where he had gone. Back in Zone B, Marshall was engaged in a fierce battle with the boss zombie. But as he stared into the creature's eyes, he saw something unexpected. A human soul trapped inside a decaying body. Empathizing with the zombie, Marshall asked if it was in pain. The terrifying boss zombie let out another deafening growl in response. The boss zombie lunged at Marshall like a predator, closing in on its prey. Known for his mastery with a sword, Marshall drew his katana and, with lightning speed, sliced through the zombie. His movement was so fast that no one could even see him strike. Marshall didn't just aim to kill the zombie, but sought to release it from its decaying body. For a moment, the boss zombie stood still before its body fell apart, cut to pieces by Marshall's expert swordsmanship. Afterward, Marshall respectfully bowed, offering a prayer for his fallen opponent's peace, then began to leave. Just as he was about to walk away, he noticed another figure, Zombie, standing silently, grieving over the body of the slain boss zombie. Zombie stood in shock, staring at his fallen comrade. Meanwhile, in the Air Force Command, they received news of Marshall's victory over the boss zombie, and the team erupted in cheers. The president of the Air Force ordered the event to be recorded as a contribution to their efforts. Back in Zone B, Zombie, still mourning, apologized to the lifeless body, admitting that they had lost control. It wasn't anyone's fault, he said, lamenting the situation. At that moment, Marshall realized that Zombie was one of the undead. Without hesitation, he drew his sword and charged, declaring that all zombies must die. Back in the Air Force, as Marshall clashed with Zombie, the team detected another boss-level threat. They remained calm, confident that Marshall would deal with this new foe as swiftly as the last. However, the girl monitoring the data felt a deep unease. The fight between Marshall and Zombie had ended in mere seconds, but to their horror, Marshall was the one who had fallen. In Zone B, Marshall was hanging from a pole, gravely injured by Zombie. Though Zombie was calm, he was still in mourning for his friend, and instead of killing Marshall outright, he left him in a critical state. Panic spread throughout the Air Force as they saw Marshall's life signals fading, and their anxiety grew as they realized that not all civilians had been evacuated. The Air Force president, deeply upset, could barely process what had happened to Marshall. Her long-standing prejudice against zombies boiled over, and without warning, she disappeared from the plane, jumping out to join the ground units in battle. Her team urgently warned her to assess zombie strength before engaging, But the president, wielding her sword, was already determined. As she descended, she called out her attack, White Blade Cleave, and came down like a shooting star, confusing the zombies on the ground. However, as her sword struck Zombie, it shattered into pieces. Stunned, the president stood in awe, witnessing Zombie's apparent invulnerability. While the president regrouped for another attack, her team continued to caution her against rushing in blindly. They couldn't send her any support, and they warned that if she underestimated Zombie, she might share Marshall's fate. Zombie, meanwhile, expressed regret for putting Marshall in such a dire condition. He feared that humans would now hate him, despite all his efforts to be accepted by them. The president, now certain that Zombie was some kind of mutant or variant, drew her second sword, her heart filled with hatred. She prepared to strike again, calling out the name of her new attack, Enhanced Blade. But before the battle could continue, Zombie tried to reason with her, hoping for a chance to explain. The president, however, ignored his plea and charged at him, but Zombie dodged effortlessly. She quickly retreated, preparing her next move, Red Blade Cleave. As she unleashed her attack, the surrounding infrastructure crumbled, cut clean in half. But once again, Zombie bent and dodged the powerful strike with ease. Frustrated and furious, the president became increasingly agitated, desperately wanting to kill Zombie with her own hands, but finding herself unable to do so. Meanwhile, the other team managed to save Marshall, though his condition was so critical that he could barely speak, muttering incoherently as the soldiers tried to comfort him. Back in the Air Force, concern grew for their president as she continued to battle recklessly. They reminded her again that the civilians had been evacuated, urging her to retreat immediately. But in Zone B, the battle between Zombie and the president raged on. Zombie, aware that time was running out, moved quickly, needing to save others before the organization bombed the city. The president, consumed by her hatred for Zombie, had lost sight of the mission, focusing only on her desire to kill him, not just because of Marshall's injuries, but because of her deep-rooted hatred. As Zombie dodged her attacks, the president demanded to know why he kept running, especially when she was so determined to fight. Zombie, swinging through the city, replied that there was no reason for him to stop when her sole intention was to cut him in half. Determined to end the fight, the president initiated her ultimate move, Leto Level 2, a technique inspired by the swift art of Japanese swordsmanship, drawing, attacking, and sheathing the blade in rapid succession. Her boots, equipped with advanced rocket-like technology, gave her an added boost, propelling her forward as she prepared for the final strike. The president launched herself after Zombie, determined to catch up. When she finally reached him, she swung her sword and struck Zombie, sending him crashing to the ground. With a look of satisfaction, the president believed she had successfully eliminated her target. Content with her victory, she ordered her team to lower the plane's altitude to pick her up. Meanwhile, in the lab, the mad scientist Faye was informed by his partner that all the human civilians they had captured to be eaten alive were safe. Faye then recalled that they had a spy within the organization he intended to sabotage. The rescued civilians cheered as the soldiers arrived to save them. On the Air Force plane, which was carrying a nuclear bomb, one of the pilots, who was secretly working with Faye, made his move. However, the co-pilot noticed the spy acting suspiciously around the plane's controls. Suddenly, the spy pressed a red button, triggering the launch of the nuke aimed at the civilians. The team, unaware they had been sabotaged, celebrated their successful mission, excited to return home after saving the civilians. But their joy was cut short when the pilots yelled out, warning that a traitor was among them and that the nuke had already been launched. Panic set in as everyone realized the gravity of the situation. Just when the president thought all was well, she received the devastating news. A spy had infiltrated their ranks and dropped a nuclear warhead. The president looked up at the sky, her heart sinking as she saw the nuke, less than a minute away from destroying the entire city. Her team scrambled to prepare for the turbulence and opened the cabin doors, lowering the plane's altitude for the president to jump back on board. To escape the explosion, she needed to use the booster in her leg gear, the same one she had used to chase Zombie. However, as she tried to escape, her leg booster malfunctioned. Regret flooded her as she realized the time she had wasted chasing Zombie when she could have stayed on the plane and led her team. She cursed herself for not charging the booster before the mission. Just then, she felt like she was being watched. She turned to see Zombie, standing there, watching her silently. To her surprise, Zombie grabbed her and spun her around, not for revenge, but to help her get back on the plane. With a powerful toss, Zombie threw the president like a baseball. She screamed as she soared through the air, but managed to land on her feet inside the plane. Her team rushed to assist her, but instead of being grateful, the president was furious that Zombie was still alive. As the nuke plummeted toward the city, Zombie, still on the ground, decided to stop it before it could destroy the abandoned city and kill all the zombies. With a powerful leap, he launched himself into the air, rocketing toward the nuke. When he reached it, he stopped it with his bare hands, calling the move barehanded nuclear warhead catch, as if he had invented it on the spot. Everyone in the organization, including the mad scientist, watched in awe as Zombie heroically stopped the nuke, triggering a massive explosion in the sky. The president couldn't believe her eyes. She was stunned that a mutant could be so strong as to stop a nuclear warhead with his bare hands. When the dust settled, Zombie stood unharmed on the ground. The only damage was to his clothes, which were torn apart, leaving him scratching his back in discomfort. Back in the mad scientist's plane, Faye decided it was time to pack up and leave. His partner resisted, pointing out that there were still life signs in the explosion zone. This wasn't Faye's first time sabotaging the organization, known as Beyonder's Academy, and he knew it wouldn't be the last. He promised to target them again, and with that, the two mad scientists left the area. On the Beyonder's Academy plane, the president felt humiliated, her pride shattered. She couldn't even speak and kept her head down in shame. Two of her team members were concerned for her, but one understood her situation. The president had spent her entire life fighting zombies, only to be saved by one in the end. A team member approached to clear things up about Zombie's identity. Despite all their high-tech equipment, they had believed Zombie was a human hero, a mass vigilante who had recently gained fame. The team confirmed that zombies had lived in the city for some time, keeping their identities hidden. The president gripped a tablet so tightly in frustration that it cracked. After the incident, it was a quiet afternoon, but people were still terrified of Zombie as he passed by, looking disheveled. He went into a payphone to call his friends, and Varmint, one of his allies, answered enthusiastically, reassuring him that everyone had escaped safely and were now looking for a new place to stay. Relieved, Zombie promised to find them once they were settled. Back at his apartment, after a long and stressful day, Zombie finally returned home to relax. However, just as he was about to enter, he sensed he was being watched. The Beyonder's Academy had hacked into his apartment's security cameras, tracking his every move. As they watched Zombie about to enter, he turned and stared directly into the camera, startling the president and her team, who realized they had been discovered. Zombie was minding his own business, working out to the song Face Off by Tech 9 featuring The Rock, using the music to pump himself up. As he exercised, his mind drifted to thoughts of his friends, whom he considered family. Seeing a picture of them together, he wondered if they had already settled down and thought about visiting them soon. Out of nowhere, the president of Beyonder's Academy made an unexpected visit, barging into Zombie's place. Without warning, she ordered her security team to take everything from Zombie's kitchen, bathroom, bedroom, pots, bowls, and even ladles. The security team spread out, following the president's commands, while Zombie lay on the ground, completely disturbed, considering calling the police to get rid of these unwanted visitors. The president then produced a legal document, introducing her organization, Beyonder's Academy. She informed Zombie that he had been accepted into the Academy and was now a member. Without his consent, she acted as if it were completely normal to invade someone's home and force them into an organization. She even ordered her security to grab Zombie and drag him out. But Zombie resisted, confused and adamant that he had never agreed to join any academy, especially one he had never even heard of. As Zombie fought back against the security guards, he kept insisting that zombies couldn't attend school, but the academy still believed him to be a human. The security team was injured in their attempts to restrain Zombie and carry him out of his own home. Eventually, they managed to force him into one of Beyonder's Academy vehicles. Meanwhile, a red-headed member of the Academy team had doubts about the president's decision. She thought it was inappropriate to forcefully enlist Zombie, pointing out that the Academy had strict criteria for recruitment. She questioned whether it was right to bring Zombie into the Academy solely on the president's orders. The redhead also noted that the Academy's dormitories were specially planned out, and if the president brought Zombie back with him, there would be no place for him to stay. Despite these concerns, the president insisted that Zombie could stay with her if needed. She was determined to recruit him, seeing great potential in Zombie that she believed could greatly benefit the Academy. Meanwhile, the security team followed the president's orders, taking all of Zombie's essentials and unpacking everything in the president's home. Zombie, still baffled by the president's sudden intrusion, stared at her in confusion. The two locked eyes, each seemingly waiting for the other to explain. Zombie, feeling intimidated, finally asked if he'd be staying at her place. The president replied with a tone of common sense, but then made things awkward by insinuating that Zombie might want to sleep with her. This bizarre assumption left Zombie momentarily panicked, and he quickly pictured a scenario involving a human and a zombie, though he dismissed it as absurd. The president clarified that Zombie would be staying in her guest room, leaving Zombie flustered as he nervously attempted to confess that he wasn't actually human. However, the president, uninterested in his confession, began removing her boots, revealing that they were part of a robotic leg. The president then shared a shocking revelation. She had amputated her own legs. She became momentarily speechless as a flashback of her childhood overtook her. The president's hatred of zombies stemmed from a traumatic event. During a zombie outbreak in her village, her parents were infected and turned into zombies, biting her legs in the process. To survive, she was forced to cut off her own legs and kill her zombified parents. Since then, she had vowed to exterminate every zombie she encountered. Upon hearing her tragic backstory, Zombie chose to remain silent, relieved that the president hadn't caught his earlier confession. He awkwardly changed the subject, asking about Beyond's Academy. The president explained that the academy was founded 1,000 years ago, 2 centuries after the first zombie outbreak, with the sole mission of combating zombies. Over the years, it had trained countless individuals to fight off zombie threats. Zombie pretended to be unfamiliar with the academy's history, though he vaguely recalled the outbreak that had turned him into a zombie. The president, too busy to continue the conversation, reminded Zombie that he was expected to report to the academy the next day, having been forcibly enlisted through a back channel. Zombie, not wanting to comply, expressed his reluctance, but the president threatened him, warning that if he tried to escape, the academy's experts would investigate his true identity. Finally, the president introduced herself as Violet and informed Zombie that a team member named Dawn would escort him to the academy, although Zombie had no memory of meeting Dawn. The next day, Zombie was greeted by a red-headed girl who turned out to be Dawn. As they arrived at the academy, Dawn seemed delighted, but Zombie still couldn't remember her. Dawn, disheartened, reminded Zombie that they had briefly met in the armored personnel carrier. After some teasing, Zombie finally remembered her but jokingly remarked on her short stature, which Dawn took offense to but chose to ignore. Dawn led Zombie to the academy's entrance exam, explaining that it was mandatory to test both physical abilities and zombie fighting skills. She gave an example of the academy's high standards, noting that applicants were expected to surpass world records, like the 100-meter sprint. Zombie felt a bit overwhelmed by the academy's expectations and started to understand why it was called Beyond's Academy. While waiting for the exam, a crowd gathered, and Zombie lifted Dawn onto his shoulders so she could see better. A bald man in the crowd, annoyed by Dawn's shouting, cursed at her, but Dawn defiantly yelled back. Zombie, trying to ease the tension, asked a theoretical question, hinting at himself. What if someone who could lift a plane didn't need to take the entrance exam? Dawn explained that the academy had no favoritism, as many students had extraordinary abilities, and it was governed by an old government that kept many secrets. Just then, a man with a peg leg appeared. He introduced himself as Chun, the head of the sports department and the examiner for the day. Before the exam began, Chun gave an inspiring speech about the academy's history and its prestigious legacy. However, he was interrupted when Zombie called out his name, shyly drawing attention to himself. Zombie asked what would happen if a zombie were found within the academy. Chun casually responded that the zombie would be torn limb from limb, and its corpse hung at the academy's gate for all to see. Chun confirmed that if a zombie were ever detected at the academy, it would be neutered, a term he clarified meant beheading the zombie's genitalia. Zombie's expression remained blank after hearing this gruesome procedure, though internally, he was horrified at the thought. Chun smirked directly at Zombie, who already felt phantom pain, just imagining the worst-case scenario. After Chen's unsettling introduction, the entrance exam finally began. All the applicants, intensely focused, waited for the signal to sprint. As soon as the referee gave the cue, the competitors, each with their own extraordinary abilities, shot off with such speed that their movements were nearly invisible. The first to cross the finish line was an orange-haired guy named Wu Qingsu, completing the race in just 3 seconds, leaving Zombie stunned, still running toward the goal. Next came the shooting test. As applicants aimed, Chin explained in the background that shooting was the most basic skill needed to fight zombies. Zombie, frustrated at being dragged into what felt like an asylum, was now being taught how to combat his own kind. As he tried to focus, he noticed Dawn, a strong competitor, on his side. With a single pull of the trigger, Dawn effortlessly beheaded all the targets, earning her a passing score while looking proud of her skills. Zombie felt out of place and humiliated by the other's prowess. Some applicants failed the test, angrily venting their frustration on the practice dummies. Zombie grew more anxious with every passing moment. Next, they moved on to the shot put test, where applicants needed to throw the heavy ball at least 80 meters to pass and 100 meters to qualify. Chun observed as they threw, calling out names of those who succeeded and failed. When it was Zombie's turn, he deliberately held back his strength, trying not to draw attention. He believed he was surrounded by lunatics. Meanwhile, Chin reviewed Zombie's file, noting his height of 182 centimeters and weight of 72 kilograms. Information provided by Violet, who had recommended Zombie for his supposed extraordinary strength. However, Chin was suspicious, seeing only average results from Zombie so far. The next test was the spear throw. Chang-Su hurled his spear with immense force, aiming at a mannequin's private parts. Zombie winced, imagining himself in the mannequin's position. With Chang-Su's strength, the spear pierced not just one but 3 mannequins, sending them flying out of the stadium and onto the street, drawing attention from bystanders. According to Chen's stopwatch, Chang-Su hit his target with a throw covering 32 kilometers, easily qualifying him. It was now Zombie's turn, but Chen suddenly stopped him, questioning whether Violet had really recommended him. Chen suspected Zombie of holding back his power, based on his underwhelming performance. This confrontation put Zombie in the spotlight, with everyone's eyes on him. Chen remembered that Zombie had asked a peculiar question before the exam, and now dared him to unleash his full strength, implying that holding back was an insult to those trying their hardest. Chen even hinted that Zombie might not be human at all. Panicking, Zombie denied the accusation, insisting he was human, though internally he began to doubt himself. Chen, however, wanted to see proof and set a condition. Zombie must surpass Chang-Su's performance or face consequences. The implication was clear. If Zombie couldn't demonstrate his strength, he would be punished, and it would reflect poorly on Violet's judgment. This threat frightened Zombie, forcing him to reassess his actions. Despite his foggy memories, Zombie knew that people from the Academy had once hunted him to use him as a perpetual power source. He had no intention of becoming anyone's fuel again. Determined to survive, Zombie decided to stop holding back. Both Chang-Su and Don eagerly awaited the reveal of his true strength. As Zombie readied himself, leaning back to prepare for the throw, his mind flashed through all his previous training. Suddenly, his left eye glowed red, a sign that he was about to unleash his full potential. His face hardened into an expression that warned everyone not to mess with him. Zombie hurled the spear with such immense power that Chang-Su's confident smirk vanished. The force of Zombie's throw tore apart the ground, launching the spear far beyond the stadium. It soared into space, bouncing off satellites and even piercing the moon. The sheer power of the throw caused a shockwave, sending everyone around flying, while Zombie stood calmly unaffected. Chun, left speechless, hadn't expected such monstrous strength from him. Meanwhile, in outer space, the spear remained lodged in the moon, a testament to Zombie's unbelievable might. At that moment, Zombie unleashed his full power, showing his true strength. After his spear-throwing test, everyone was still suspended in the air from the shockwave. Zombie, standing calmly as if nothing had happened, glanced upward as if searching for his target. The ground beneath him was destroyed from the impact of his throw, leaving everyone speechless. Dawn rushed over to Zombie. Amazed by his feat, she asked him where the spear had landed, but Zombie shrugged, admitting he had no idea. He had just given it his all. Meanwhile, the missing piece of the moon, now an asteroid, drifted aimlessly through space. Having pierced the moon, Zombie was immediately qualified for the Academy. After receiving his certificate, all he wanted was to go home. However, Dawn saw Zombie as someone with the potential to become one of the Academy's presidents. She tried to persuade him, highlighting the power and authority that would come with such a role. Presidents like Violet, Dawn explained, commanded armies, tanks, aircraft, and long-range cannons, even having access to nuclear weapons. Violet herself ruled over a city of 30 million people, with the mayor merely helping to manage the city under her control. Despite all these privileges, Zombie remained uninterested. Later, Dawn gave Zombie a tour of the Academy. She showed him the biotech department, where all weapons were made, essentially functioning as the Academy's logistics hub. As they walked, Zombie noticed a picture of a happy family, with a man who looked like the mad scientist he had encountered before. Dawn explained that the man in the picture was Jamie, the former president of the biotech department. Jamie had once been a brilliant scientist, but after the death of his wife, he became obsessed with bizarre experiments involving both humans and zombies. Rumor had it that Jamie's goal was to fulfill his wife's dream. Eventually, Jamie was dismissed from the Academy for his dangerous experiments, and the Academy issued orders to kill him on sight. As Dawn and Zombie discussed Jamie's downfall, a scientist approached, asking if they had completed their entrance exam. Dawn confirmed, and Zombie recognized the woman. Curious, he asked Dawn who she was. Dawn revealed that the woman was Jamie's adopted daughter and the current head of the biotech department. The scientist, Kin, offered to help them with any equipment they might need. Excited, Dawn immediately requested trousers that could conceal her oversized Gatling gun. Kin, familiar with Dawn's love for firearms, predicted that she was aiming to join the Academy's gunner department, which Dawn confirmed. Her passion for shooting things was her main motivation for attending the Academy. Kin, focused on her work, barely noticed Zombie until she looked up and was startled by his appearance. Screaming in terror, Dawn quickly defended Zombie, claiming he was just wearing a zombie mask. However, Kin wasn't fooled. She knew Zombie was, in fact, a real zombie. Still, she went along with Dawn's explanation, reasoning that if Zombie truly were dangerous, he would have attacked her already. Turning her attention back to work, Kin asked Zombie if he needed anything. He mentioned that he always ended up naked whenever he returned home and requested clothes that couldn't be torn apart. Kin found his request strange but accepted the challenge nonetheless. Meanwhile, over at the swordsmanship department, a man named Marshall appeared, looking ashamed. Standing before him was a woman lounging casually. Marshall reported his humiliating defeat in battle, recalling how he had been instantly blinded and, moments later, found himself naked, hanging from a lamppost. The woman, unimpressed, confidently remarked that Zombie was no match for her. However, Marshall insisted that Zombie was far stronger than she realized. The woman, revealed as the swordsmanship department president Sean Lanky, approached Marshall with an intimidating presence, demanding to know Zombie's name. After glaring at him for a while, she let Marshall go. Lanky was similar to Violet, but specialized in swords. For generations, there had been fierce rivalry between the sword and blade departments, with both sides resorting to underhanded tactics to outdo one another. The competition was so intense that they would rather give birth to an extra member than allow the other department to have more people. Back in the present, Marshall wished Zombie luck, knowing Lanky was just as strong as Violet. Later, during a lesson about zombie behavior, a teacher explained that in addition to eating human flesh, zombies had a peculiar love for eggs. He instructed the class to use this knowledge, along with zombies' vulnerability to attacks on their heads, when setting traps. Zombie, ever diligent, took notes on everything the teacher said. Dawn, noticing how seriously Zombie was taking the lesson, thought it was odd when he mentioned wanting to share his knowledge with his family, the community of zombie citizens. Before Dawn could comment further, an announcement interrupted the class, instructing everyone to gather at the gymnasium immediately. Dawn was puzzled by the announcement since they had just had an assembly earlier. Once in the gymnasium, students gathered while Zombie casually ate a popsicle, and Dawn remained curious about the sudden event. Violet arrived, instructing Zombie and Dawn to stay quiet and avoid causing trouble, reminding them both that they were recommended by her. Dawn then asked a random question about whether Zombie could even eat while wearing his mask. Zombie awkwardly explained before Lanky entered the gymnasium. A boy standing beside Kin pointed out Zombie, identifying him as their target. They seemed to underestimate him. Assuming he was slow-witted, the boy asked Lanky if they could test Zombie, and she allowed it to see what Zombie was capable of. Moments later, another figure appeared. An imposing man with robotic assistants flanking him, a large scar running across his face. The man was the Academy's chief. As he entered, everyone bowed their heads in respect, recognizing him as the president of the Mechanical Life Form Department. Noticing Zombie standing clueless, Dawn pulled his head down, urging him to follow suit. While most of the students showed deference to the chief, Lanky stood unfazed. The chief warned Lanky not to cause trouble, but she ignored him and left. The boy beside her questioned her sudden departure when their target was right there. However, for Lanky, the chief was more important than Zombie. She only respected the strong. Unlike Lanky, the chief praised Violet for her hard work, and Violet humbly accepted, stating that she was just doing her duty. Meanwhile, Zombie noticed the tense atmosphere between the department presidents as Dawn playfully asked him what flavor popsicle he had. Zombie replied nonchalantly that he liked eggs. He then asked Dawn how powerful the chief was. Dawn explained that the chief was connected to Jamie, revealing that the chief was Jamie's masterpiece, a product of enhanced human evolution. He was the sole survivor of Jamie's thousands of experimental subjects, and after Jamie's expulsion, the chief established a Mechanical Life Form Department. He also ruled over a city of 50 million people, where not a single zombie had appeared in the past 10 years. The chief city was so secure that any threat, even the slightest, was immediately eradicated. Zombie, feeling somewhat intimidated by the chief, listened as Dawn expressed her admiration. The chief then took the stage, addressing the students. He emphasized that despite being freshmen, the academy needed their help. Curious about how they could contribute, the students listened as the chief ordered one of his robotic assistants to project an image. The image displayed a man sitting, whom the chief revealed was a spy caught months earlier. This spy had nearly caused a nuclear warhead to fall, threatening the Beyonders Academy. Zombie was infuriated when he recognized the man as the one responsible for dropping a bomb on him. The chief explained that while the spy deserved immediate execution, the academy believed he might have valuable information about Jamie. Zombie, in his thoughts, realized that the zombie threat had diminished, and most conflicts were now due to internal strife. Don agreed with him, mentioning how some people simply wanted to watch the world burn. The chief continued, stating that despite numerous attempts, including torture methods such as tiger benches, needles, castration, and simulated drowning, they had been unable to get the spy to talk. Desperate, the chief decided to rely on the freshman, offering a deal. Whoever could make the spy talk would be named vice president of the academy. The students, eager for such a rare opportunity, immediately raised their hands. Volunteering for the mission, the first student selected eagerly ran off to confront the spy. 2 hours later, he returned, having failed to make any progress. As time passed, the remaining freshmen became desperate, employing increasingly bizarre methods, from prayers and childish annoyances to bizarre Buddha techniques. Violet, observing their antics, felt embarrassed for them. Meanwhile, Zombie and Don continued eating their popsicles, relaxed amidst the chaos. Don asked Zombie if he thought he could make the spy talk. Confidently, Zombie boasted that not only could he do that, but he could also make the spy sing. Intrigued and excited, Don called the chief's attention, nominating Zombie to go next. The chief agreed and directed Zombie toward the spy. Don was surprised by Zombie's sudden willingness to step into the spotlight, given his usual tendency to keep a low profile. As Zombie walked forward, Lanky glared at him, watching his every move. In his mind, Zombie reflected on how his subordinates had been losing control recently, suspecting that the spy might hold some answers. He approached the spy, who remained convinced that no one could break him. The two faced off against each other, with Zombie glaring at the spy, sizing him up. The spy insulted the academy, mocking them for sending a zombie-like individual. It became clear that the spy was a devoted follower of Jamie. In a swift motion, Zombie slashed at the spy, leaving a small scar. Confused, the spy erupted into hysterical laughter, believing that injuring him was all Zombie could do. However, Zombie remained dead serious, commanding the spy to stand up. To everyone's shock, Violet, Don, and the chief included, the spy obeyed without hesitation. It turned out that the scar Zombie inflicted was a virus coursing through the spy's veins, reaching his brain, and allowing Zombie to control him. When Zombie asked for the spy's name, he quickly responded, Kai. Those watching were speechless, amazed by Zombie's newfound mind control ability. Zombie then inquired about Kai's connection to Jamie, and without skipping a beat, Kai claimed to know a great deal, curious about why zombies were suddenly going berserk. Zombie learned from Kai that Jamie had released a drug into the city that drove the zombies mad. This drug allowed Jamie to exert a degree of control over them, using the berserk zombies to attack humans and gather data on the Beyond Door Academy. Zombie pressed further, asking about their rebellion, but Kai admitted he had no knowledge of Jamie's motives, only that Jamie was planning something significant. When Zombie asked where Jamie was, Kai answered promptly, revealing that Jamie was hiding in a secret base approximately 500 meters beneath the city. Lanky, watching in awe, was left speechless at Zombie's display of strength. As Zombie commanded Kai to turn around, he ominously warned him of the hatred humans harbored and revealed the virus inside his brain that could trigger suicide if needed. He then told Kai to take care. Under Zombie's control, Kai stared blankly, acknowledging his understanding. Meanwhile, deep beneath the city, Jamie was alerted that Kai had betrayed them. Knowing the Beyond Door Academy had discovered their hideout, Jamie pondered his next move, feeling somewhat reassured that the Academy was heading toward him. His assistant, however, was anxious, aware of the Academy's formidable capabilities. Jamie remained calm, confident that his experiment was nearing completion. He considered it an opportune moment for the Academy to intrude and witness the historical unveiling of his perfected life form. Back at the Academy, Zombie had just exited the room, leaving everyone intimidated by him. Whispers spread among the students about Zombie's mind control ability, and Violet felt a chill run down her spine. Lanky began to recognize Zombie's true strength, while the other students realized he was not to be trifled with. Suddenly, one person broke the tension by applauding. It was the chief, proud to see such remarkable talent among the freshmen. Following this revelation, the chief promised to appoint Zombie as the next vice president. However, Zombie remained fixated on Jamie, though the chief assured him that Jamie wouldn't escape. Lanky, feeling somewhat bored, decided to follow the chief and Zombie as they moved to the registration process. One of the boys beside Lanky found it odd that there was a formal registration to become vice president, making Lanky suspicious of the situation. In an abandoned industrial area, a strange quietness settled in and Zombie felt uneasy. He wondered if this deserted place would be under his control. remembering that he needed to get registered and pursue Jamie. Zombie was caught off guard when the chief abruptly questioned when he had learned to speak human language. Clearly sensing Zombie's true nature, feigning ignorance, Zombie acted dumb when questioned. The chief then swiftly drew his gun and fired at Zombie. But standing behind Zombie was Lanky and her assistant, the latter expressing concern for Lanky. Yet Lanky quickly recognized the chief's weapon, known for its ability to disintegrate matter. The chief was not easily fooled and chastised the academy for allowing Zombie to infiltrate. In a moment that seemed like a beheading, the chief believed he had eliminated Zombie, considering the Zombie's weakness was their head. The chief apologized, feeling he had no choice due to Zombie's trespass into a restricted area. However, he soon realized Zombie was unfazed. The attack had left no trace of him visible to the naked eye. Suddenly, Zombie was smashed into a building, sustaining some damage. Chief's robot assistants then arrived, unleashing lasers at Zombie, resulting in an explosion at the abandoned site. Yet Zombie quickly grabbed the robots and hurled them away, effectively destroying the highly advanced machines. Chief felt uneasy watching Zombie fight back, wondering how he could still move without a head. Zombie, headless yet gripping one of the robot assistants, prepared for another attack. Lanky and her subordinate were astonished by Zombie's resilience. As Zombie charged at Chief, he managed to dodge the strike, but Zombie relentlessly attacked, landing multiple blows while Chief evaded each one. Frustrated by Zombie's speed despite his decapitated state, Chief pulled out his weapon, but Zombie dodged again. Chief's irritation grew as he realized that Zombie was surprisingly fast. Attempting to regroup, Chief jumped back to strategize. Lanky's subordinate thought Chief was in trouble, but Lanky wasn't concerned, knowing that Chief was just getting serious. She understood that men like him often enjoyed showcasing their flashy moves, so she advised the subordinate to step back to avoid getting caught in the fray. Meanwhile, Zombie's head began to regenerate, spiraling until it formed back into its original shape. Lanky and her subordinate gasped in shock at the sight of Zombie's head growing back. Zombie, wishing to have a conversation and not intending to harm Chief, found that Chief underestimated him. Chief, suspicious of Zombie's potential mind control, was eager to keep the fight going and summoned one of his robot suits, Model 1. The fragments of Model 1 swirled into the area and attached themselves to Chief, transforming him into a robotic figure. Zombie was perplexed, while Lanky and her subordinate watched in awe. Chief proudly declared himself the mechanical life form, acting and speaking like a robot as he prepared for his next attack. He struck Zombie with a powerful blow to the kneecap, sending him flying. As Zombie fell, Chief readied himself for another strike, delivering a solid punch to Zombie's gut that propelled him off the ground. Lanky and her subordinate marveled at the intense battle. Chief pressed on, continuously attacking Zombie, who struggled to fight back against the relentless blows. Chief then delivered his final blow, slamming Zombie into the ground. As Zombie's body hit the ground, Chief landed gracefully on his feet, proclaiming that all zombies must be exterminated. He prepared for his ultimate attack, unleashing a disintegrating laser from his chest. Lanky was filled with terror as the dark alley lit up brightly from the laser's power. Chief panted, believing that Zombie had been annihilated. To his disbelief, Zombie stood up and walked toward him, leaving Chief feeling foolish. Zombie remained perfectly still before unleashing a bone-chilling scream that made Lanky and her subordinate flinch. Even Chief, despite his advanced suit, was affected by the deafening sound. Zombie was dead serious, even sprouting hair, which horrified Lanky and her subordinate. Zombie approached Chief, who felt a twinge of fear creeping in. It seemed that Zombie had lost his playful demeanor, and as he stood his ground, the sky began to spiral ominously. The vortex grew larger, encompassing the city, catching the attention of Dawn and alarming Lanky, who had been relaxed moments before. Citizens below gaped at the massive spiral overhead, while Chief stood speechless and intimidated. Zombie calmly extended an opportunity for a peaceful resolution, but Chief refused to listen, remaining confused and confrontational. Zombie ominously asked Chief how he wanted to die. Lanky and her subordinate noticed Zombie's drastic change in demeanor, sending an ominous chill down their spines. They decided to leave immediately, fearing they might get caught in the impending chaos. Chief, who had never felt threatened by another being in his life, maintained his tough facade, refusing to show fear. He continued to provoke Zombie, daring him to attack. As Lanky and her subordinate fled, Lanky's companion mentioned that he had gone through Zombie's database, but had never encountered a creature as strong as Zombie. They hoped to escape the fallout from the duel between Zombie and Chief. However, as they ran, they became aware that the battle could spill over into the new city. Chief's limbs were damaged from the confrontation, and Zombie approached him once more. In desperation, Chief summoned his remaining robot assistants, Models 2, 3, and 4, which created a massive explosion. Caught in the chaos beside Chief, Lanky heard him plead for help, recognizing the danger Zombie posed. Yet, overwhelmed with fear, Lanky chastised Chief for provoking Zombie in the first place. She urged both her subordinate and Chief to split up and escape while they still could. As Zombie lay on the ground, he prepared to launch his next attack. Lanky quickly realized that Zombie wouldn't let them escape easily. With a powerful strike to the ground, Zombie caused an earthquake that threw Lanky off balance, making her fall. She was both horrified and confused by the sudden turn of events. Zombie then gripped the ground and lifted it, causing half the city to float into the air. The citizens panicked, terrified of the chaotic scene unfolding before them. Even Dawn was mesmerized, witnessing the entire city hovering above the ground. Meanwhile, Chief had fallen hard, hitting his head on the ground. Zombie seized the opportunity to approach him, smirking as he lifted Chief's limbless body by the head, taunting him about whether he felt threatened in that moment. With a villainous grin, Zombie was confident that he could not control a robot's mind. But Chief wasn't purely robotic. Despite his mechanical limbs, Chief still possessed a human brain. Zombie tightened his grip on Chief's head, applying the same technique he had used on the spy earlier. As the virus spread through Chief's body and reached his brain, Zombie glimpsed fragments of Chief's memories. He saw two adults in shadowy silhouettes, and then witnessed Chief's childhood, where he was an orphan facing the loss of his parents. The scene shifted to a doctor performing body modification surgery, where Chief's human parts were replaced with metal. After viewing Chief's past, Zombie mocked him for being more miserable than a zombie, deciding to spare Chief. He believed that living would cause him more suffering than death. Losing interest, Zombie tossed Chief off the cliff, but Lanky managed to catch him just in time. Shocked and horrified, Lanky realized that one of Zombie's abilities was memory reading. Suddenly, Zombie vanished. Later that night, he returned to his usual self, packing his belongings to escape his feelings of shame for losing control. Even Zombie felt frightened by his own emotions and kept reassuring himself that he was a friendly, nice zombie. Yet he was too ashamed to face humanity as he walked toward the door, only to be caught by Violet. With no choice but to silence her, Zombie apologized for what he was about to do, but was interrupted when Violet showed him a document. It was a formal declaration stating that he was now the official vice president of the Beyonders Academy. Confused by the lack of violent reactions to his earlier outburst, Zombie was further puzzled to learn that Chief had consented to his new position. He asked Violet if Chief had ever mentioned anything about him, and she replied that Chief regarded Zombie as a good human, even congratulating him on his achievements. Meanwhile, Chief was bedridden, with Lanky at his side. Lanky believed it was a mistake for Chief to allow Zombie to stay, given his true nature. However, Chief focused on the opportunities Zombie presented, regardless of his humanity. Lanky was worried about Zombie going berserk again, but Chief was willing to take that risk. He then shifted the conversation to the arrangements they needed to make. Despite his defeat, Chief's thoughts lingered on Professor Jamie, as he vowed to erase all traces of him. Somewhere out in the sea, back in the zombie society, news broke that Zombie was being held hostage in a human city. Varmint, a loyal member of the society, asked his companions for suggestions on how to rescue their king. The society protested, demanding that all humans be killed to save Zombie. Blackie criticized Varmint for worrying, knowing full well the extent of Zombie's monstrous power. Back at the Beyonders Academy, Chief had fully recovered and called for everyone to prepare, as they were ready to confront Professor Jamie. Meanwhile, in the city, Zombie and Dawn strolled through the streets, with Dawn fascinated by how the abandoned area had been maintained. Suddenly, a soldier blocked their path, followed by a group of military personnel. Zombie was confused, but the soldiers formally greeted him, welcoming him to his new city, which would now be under his rule. They informed Zombie that they would follow his orders from that moment on. Stunned by how quickly everything had changed, Zombie hadn't even sought any recognition for his achievements. The soldiers stood at attention, welcoming their new vice president, Zombie.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on upcoming videos. Leave a like if you enjoyed it and share with your friends. See you in the next video. Bye for now.